I've long pondered the question, what causes us to thrive? What causes us to step into our fullest potential? What gives us that oomph to do what it is that we were born to do? And I believe it comes down to two things. I believe it comes down to number one, environment. Let's be honest, environment shapes us. Whether we care to admit it or not, it does shape us. We are all a product of our upbringing. That's environment. So environment definitely has a role to play. But number two, it's our response to and interpretation of our environment. So let me share with you a story that's captivated me for the longest time. Two twin brothers grew up in exactly the same environment, yet they took very divergent life paths. The one became an alcoholic, the one became incredibly successful. The interesting thing is, though, when both were asked, to what do you attribute your life choices, they both had exactly the same answer. The alcoholic said, well, because my dad was an alcoholic. The successful person said, well, because my dad was an alcoholic. So isn't it interesting? They had the same environment, but they both had a different interpretation to and response to that environment. So we can talk about the latter, but I really want to talk about environment today. And it's something that I've thought about a lot, particularly in my personal journey. Nearly 3 years ago, I packed up my life, I put my house in storage, and I became completely location independent. I decided to travel Southern Africa and just kind of go wherever I felt like going. And it's been an amazing 2.5 years. But I've also come back into Cape Town and I'm feeling like this is my heart place. And I'm feeling like I want to put roots down here. And let me tell you what's impacted that decision. Environment. I've stayed in some amazing places. I've stayed in some really soul places that have just spoken to my soul. I've also stayed in some terrible places. But it's been an interesting journey. And what I've noticed is when I stay in the places that speak to my soul, I perform better. When I stay in the places that don't speak to my soul, that suck my soul dry, I don't perform as well. And I have learned about me that I need to pay attention to the environment I put myself in. Now, when we're growing up, when we're children like those two boys, we can't necessarily choose our environment, and this is where we start learning to choose our response to and interpretation of the environment. But as adults, you have full responsibility to choose the environment you put yourself in. So my question to you today is, what environment are you putting yourself in, and is it conducive to you thriving? Is it conducive to you becoming the best person you can possibly be? So let's look at the two environments that I believe matter the most, because we simply spend the most time in these environments. The first one is obviously work. The second one is home. Now, you might not be able to change your work environment right this minute, or your home environment right this minute. But I want you to think about and ask yourself, what can you do to change your environment to make you more productive? I come back to, as adults, we are fully responsible for the environments that we choose to put ourselves in. Think about your friend circle, your social circle. You are with them because you like the environment that is created when you're with these people. You move away from people who create an environment that is untenable for you. So let's go back to work and let's talk about toxic environments and toxic cultures. And yes, I've had my fair share working in toxic cultures, and this too has contributed to my learning. But here's the thing, not all environments are created equal. You might have heard the expression, one man's bread is another man's gravy. Now, I couldn't understand, in the various toxic companies that I've worked for, I couldn't understand how some people just seemed to thrive in this environment, and they didn't share my view that it was a toxic environment. And that's step number one. If you are exposed to an environment that is not conducive for you, just because you call it a toxic environment doesn't necessarily mean it is in fact a toxic environment. So that's the first thing. Understand that not all environments are created equal. The second thing I want you to think about is I really want you to dive in to understanding who you are. And a big part of that is learning which environments are good for you. And then the third step is to ask yourself, how can I change my environment to set myself up to thrive? And if you need to change your work environment, put a plan in place and move in the right direction. And if you need to change your home environment, put a plan in place and move in that direction. And sometimes it's not as dramatic as getting a new job or moving into a new house. Sometimes it's as simple as changing your attitude in the workplace. Sometimes it's as simple as making sure that you're surrounded by fresh flowers in your home environment that lifts your mood. So ask yourself today, or consider these 3 points today. Number one, not all environments are created equal. What is the environment that serves you? Which leads into number two, who are you? Know the environments that serve you. Which leads into step number three, how do you change your current environment to better serve you so that you can step into your fullest potential, so that you can thrive, so that you can live a life of unbridled potential? Think about it today.